Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Misham Fierswelt the 25th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Covenant of the Forge by Dan Parkinson. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the link in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate links. This is the 40th anniversary year. Do I need to say year after anniversary? Of Dragonlance. And in November, I'm going to be rolling out the 40th anniversary celebration. So if you want to help roll that out, if you want to participate to the 40th anniversary celebration, all you got to do is submit an audio file, a video file, or a link to either of those, a piece of art or a piece of writing, just a little blurb about what you love about Dragonlance, how it's impacted your life, or maybe just a nice, cool picture that you think is relevant to Dragonlance. Now, you can send it through email to info@dlsaga.com or go to my website, dlsaga.com, and it has a little button there of joining the celebration, and you can link it from there, and a bunch of other information is there as well. So the way this works out, this is just my perspective. It may differ from yours, and that's okay. We're all grown adults with differing opinions based on life experience, regions we lived, cultures that we were raised in, all sorts of extenuating factors. I celebrate the difference between us. I don't want to live in this weird clone-like world where everyone huddles together and agrees on everything. That's creepy. I'm not a fan of creep. So, ironically, even though I am kind of a creep. If you have a different opinion than what I'm sharing, then please put it in live chat if you happen to be joining live, or if you're watching this after the fact, put it in the comments below, and you'll always get a response from me. And other people too. It's not just me here. All right, so these is pre-written. I'm basically writing it every 100 pages-ish. This is a very short novel. It's just barely over 300. And so we're going to be burning through this pretty quickly. Really quick, James, thanks for tuning in early. Appreciate you. Chris, always great to see you. Giggles the Clown, your name terrifies me. I'm sure you're a lovely human. But clowns, really? You kind of freak me out. Hello from Peninsula of Michigan. And anyone else? I don't know. You want to join in? Say hi. No one's going to bite. All right. This is a great first third to the novel. We are introduced to a historian and seer named Mr. Thrax. He's recording the history of the dwarves in his old age, and he has his dream where he's shown the Kalnar of Thorin would have to seek Everbarden as an outcast because Thorin would be washed in blood. For those of you who may not be aware, Kalnar is a subspecies of dwarf. Thorin is the second home of what used to be Thorbardin, which was one of the Kal Thax that the dwarves unearthed, cleared out and stuff, and sort of inhabited, delved into, one of the Dwarven kingdoms. So Thorbardin was one of the first Dwarven kingdoms after they migrated south from Taladas. Then they moved over to a bunch of other places, other Kal Thaxes like Kaelin and stuff. And then they tried to find Thorbardin again, and they couldn't find it anymore. And so they ended up creating another kingdom called Thorin, which would later become Zakar. But right now, we're so far back in the history, this is pre-Cataclysm, this is pre-Age of Might, that it's just called Thorin. Everbarden is a reference to a lasting home. It will ultimately be Thorbardin. Okay, so now that we got all the vernacular taken care of, then we see a scout group from Thorin ambushed by humans, and they're all killed to the dwarf. They did take more than twice the humans with them, however, so not too shabby. The humans are led by a mage named Greyfen, who has no eyes and sees through these red gems in his sockets. I'm really confused by this Greyfen character. He was clearly immortal at one time, influenced by the Grey Gem of Gargath in some way, which has caused the red eye or something like that. And that chaotic magic has now sort of taken him over. And he's going to be in this novel from the very beginning and then cut off to all the way to the very end, and he's going to come back. It doesn't make any sense to me how or why or what, but for some reason he's persistent. And his motivations are completely ridiculous. Like at the very beginning of this novel, Greyfen's motivation are to kill all dwarves and take their stuff, because it must be wonderful stuff if it's, under the earth, I guess is the logic here. In the end, the same guy is giving some weird premonition, but we'll get to that. All right. So he's not quite alive or dead, just this sort of perpetual shade type character. He believes that there's riches in the dwarves are hiding in Thorin, and so he's hired thousands of mercenaries to invade the Dwarven kingdom during their solstice festival called Baladine or whatever. Every year, the dwarves of Thorin host the neighboring humans community of Golash and Chandra, where they engage in festivities and trade goods. With this new mercenary group, thousands have arrived posing as members of these two nations, and while the leadership then arrives, they're taken hostage by them. The dwarves are tipped off to the potential attack by having caught a human with one of their scouts' swords and horses that returned on its own. With the scout team missing, they know something is up, and so they plan on defense. The attack is swift and quick, and even though they knew that it was coming, the Kalnar dwarves were caught off guard. They trapped the human host in Thorin, and Mistral killed the mage, who was the only one inside Thorin by the end of the battle. Now, and so we're led to believe that because he threw him off a cliff, he's dead, but he keeps coming back. Now he will report to the chieftain of the Kalnar of Thorin, Colin Stonetooth, and tell him of his vision. So Mistral had this vision about the dwarves leaving for a new Everbarden, as I mentioned earlier. We cut to Colin Stonetooth leaving and handing leadership of the Kalnar to his son, Tolan Farsight, as he and many others are going to travel to Kal Thax, believed to be in the Kharolis Mountains to the west. The dwarves, as soon as they migrated south from Taladas, they split all across the country. And all across Ansalon. And they lost track of each other. It's not like they had internet or post. There's no mail. So basically, the entire Dwarven culture is trying to find the other cultures that came down and were sort of disrupted by the Grey Gem of Gargath. And so there's tons of what they call Kal Thax, which is like Cold Home or something like that. Tons of these different small communities scattered all throughout the mountains of pre-cataclysm Krynn. And there's just one that's supposed to be in Kharolis, which is where that vision came from. So Colin renames his followers no longer the Kalnar, because they lived high up in the mountains. They're now the Hylar. And they come across a knight guarding a bridge, very much like Sir Lancelot from the film Excalibur, who defeats everyone who attempts to cross it until the dwarves tear the bridge out from under him. The knight teaches them new fighting techniques, and they continue on to the Kal Thax. Now, the Kal Thax is already occupied, and the dwarves of Kal Thax are battling humans who are trying to raid the riches of the dwarves. This is a common theme, not only of humans thinking that the dwarves have riches underneath their mountain, but the dwarves think each other have riches hidden away from each other in this Kal Thax specifically, but also just in general. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of distrust. There's a lot of animosity between these subcultures of dwarf, which makes no logical sense to me because all of us humans just love each other. So why would the dwarves hate each other for no reason at all, right? Tongue firmly planted in cheek. All right, so the dwarves are going after each other looking for riches as there's an active dragon war. I'm assuming at this point in history, this is the second dragon war that's tear-parting the land to the east. The Dwargar are trying to kill the Theiwar because that they believe they're holding out on treasure. In truth, the Theiwar are actually delving deeper into the mountain per a prophecy that they are experiencing as well. So this prophecy is hitting not only the Theiwar Thane, but also this mysterious Mistral Thrax sage loremaster type character, driving two different groups to do ultimately what will become Thorbardin, but they don't know what each disparate part is as of yet. They're told that the highest of the deep dwarves will rule this new kingdom that they are now delving into. The plot to kill the Theiwar fails, and a new leader rises in the Dwargar, who, after the battle, raises Theiwar, Dwargar, and Klar to all collectively attack the Theiwar kingdom. They find that they're missing from their homes, having delved deep into the mountain and covered their tracks. The Dwargar turn against the Theiwar, and they nearly kill each other. Because if you're already in a mob, and you can't find the thing that you're hunting, why not just turn against each other? I mean, you're already there with pitchforks and knives, right? Just start killing people. All right, so more humans and ogres are upset by the dragon war attack. And when I say upset, I mean they're actually like thrown out of their homes due to the fighting. And as the Theiwar go to help, they find more refugees. They almost get defeated by this new army and begin to retreat when the Theiwar told everyone that they could stay in this newly delved kingdom, but the Theiwar will rule the new location if they do. Then a mysterious figure appears that was in the Theiwar chief's dream and reiterates the coming dwarves will rule this new kingdom, and they all suddenly hear the drums of Colin Stonetooth's Hylar. Now, they describe this as a tall human with a staff, which is the description of that human mage that was killed at the very beginning of the novel, which, again, makes no sense. And like at some point, I was like, well, that has to be reorcs, right? It's like an avatar of reorcs. But no, at the very end, it explains exactly who it is. And you just sit here like scratching your head like that made no sense. So the Hylar are finishing training with this knight called Glendon Hawk, and award him with a dwarven crafted sword for the efforts. The dwarves press on to Kal Thax and come across human raiders, destroying them. They arrive at the mountain to be confronted by elves from Kolinisty, headed back to go into Sylvanisty to fight the dragon battles in the east. The dwarves make friends with them, and they share the location of the other dwarves and their battle. The Hylar claim the abandoned Theiwar dwelling and arrive to aid the other dwarves. They try to attack the Hylar as they're rounded up by the superior fighting techniques, and the Hylar Thane Colin Stonetooth declares that this will be Everbarden for them, and they will help defend the land as a new member here. Initially, everyone argues, but ultimately, what can they do? They relent. Then another fight comes, and they defeat it completely. Colin is showing grace and trust in the fellow Thanes, asking their opinions and thoughts, and this is a completely new act for any of them, because ultimately they've all acted independently within their own little different clans. Now here comes this other guy who is incredibly effective in fighting and leadership and combat, and he's like asking everyone's opinion, even the Gully Dwarf, the Agar Dwarves' opinions, and that's just never been done. And so everyone's just sort of scratching their head like, who the hell is this guy? So it's new to the constant warring clans, and this version of the dwarves frames the subraces as little more than opinions rather than genetic differences, while it simultaneously explains their genetic differences. For example, Colin's son prefers the outside air, so he declares that he is a Nidar. The Nidar didn't exist. It's brand new. And so he was just like, yeah, that's a great name. I'm going to use that. And ultimately, the other Einar, which were what the Nidar ultimately are, the air outside hill-loving people, adopt the name Nidar for themselves, much like the Kalinar changed their names to Hylar. So there's no real difference. But then the author goes into great detail about describing how the Theiwar, Derigar, and Theiwar and Klar are all significantly different, leading you to believe that there are actually subracial differences, like genetic differences between them. So is the assumption that there are some clans of dwarves that are genetically predisposed to their clan, and then there are other dwarves who can just be adopted into the Nidar family because they just like open air, and it doesn't matter what their originating clan is from? People like me need answers. And I've always been told through Dragonlance, through its own game supplements, its own novels, that every single subrace is genetically slightly different than every other. And this book flies right in the face of that. So it kind of bothers me. All right. The assassin Glome has moved between the Theiwar and Derigar, even befriending the Klar as if he's part of each subrace too. So he, as a character, presents himself as, I am all of the different clans. I'm the only person that could be your king. But he's of neither of them because they describe him as being completely separate in all ways from every different clan. And so again, like, what kind of dwarf is he? If he's not any of the other clans that are present, then it just makes no sense. And the whole idea of these sub-races, these different clans, falls flat and sort of unravel, which unravels everything. Because then the Hylar are literally no different than the Theiwar or the Derigar, except that the Derigar can't actually see. They have to have these massive masks because the light's too bright. but no other mountain-dwelling dwarf has any problem with light? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway. The last third of this novel really picks up momentum, as the elves were sent to meet the knight, as they may want to help the dragons in the east. The knights were from Ergoth. They discover the delvings the Theiwar made into the Urkan Sea and declare it Thorbardin, with a council of thanes ruling, one for each the Theiwar, Hylar, Theiwar, Dergar, Klar, Nidar, and Agar. They all have different skill sets, so they aid each other in delving out and building new homes and roads beneath the mountains. Colin's son, Kale Greeneye, is taking representatives from each clan on a scouting mission in order to build roads to divert all of the human traffic that's fleeing the east and end up in a rocky pass where they meet the elves again. They claim the mountain territory and discuss taking the road up to Ergoth. They also met with Lord Charon, an Ergoth knight, and opened trade with him, and they will help build the road and patrol it in exchange for this open trade. Just as everything seems to be going well, Glom the assassin waits for the perfect time and strikes and kills the Hylar Thane Colin Stonetooth. I was genuinely pissed off in this moment because it was the most ignoble death. He was just standing there, getting ready to move on to the next scene, and then bloop, lands through the chest. I just wanted to strangle Glom because he's a punk ass who does not deserve to live. But thankfully, the author believes that as well, because he quickly gets his due. So his rebels kill all of the Thane's guards as well. They take a massive toll in the process, and as Glom is holding Colin's corpse over his head, demanding everyone name him king, a spirit manifests in the sea, claiming that the covenant of the different Thanes is now forged in blood, and disappears. Again, this ghost is described as the human mage from the beginning of the novel. And I'm completely confused by this, because it's presenting this as the human mage Greyfen that Mistral Thrax killed early in the novel, but why would he care about the future of the Dwarven race or the kingdom of Thorbardin? And why is Mistral fighting him later on, only to then destroy him, as the human mage was blessing the grandson of Colin as the father of kings? It makes no sense, there's zero logic to it, and I'm completely confused. The king and his guards are buried in the newly named Valley of Thanes, and Colin's daughter, Tara, is offered the role of Thane. She asks for everyone to accept the choice of her husband, Willin Ironmaul, instead, and she ultimately gives birth in a wonderful scene where the men are all rushed out of the birthing room and the various clan women aid in the birth. Now look, I helped deliver my children with the doctors and nurses. I cut their umbilical cords when they came out. I could never imagine not being there with my wife when she brought them into the world. These are two of the most important moments of my entire life. Being able to hold my children right out of the womb for the first time, it's literally miraculous. It should not happen. It's like we just created life. It's amazing. And it completely moved me as a human being. I just don't know why this stereotype exists. Men impregnate women. They should be there at birth, helping them deliver them. We are half of the equation of creating life. So why does every single story always end when it comes to like pregnancy of women shouting for towels, hot water, and ushering the men out of the delivery room? I don't get it. I just don't understand it at all. And again, look, if you've ever had sex, then yeah, there's some weird shit happening when a birth, because you know what to expect. And then suddenly all the baby comes out and the afterbirth and everything. So it's a lot to take in, and the women don't have to see it, but they have to live through it. And it's much worse on their end. So there's no reason for a guy not to be able to be there to help, if for no other reason, to help comfort the pregnant mother or help coach her through the situation. Or in my case, I was literally holding a leg and like pushing it back per the doctor's instructions. It's very weird and confusing, but whatever. Anyway, I just hate that stereotype, so I had to bring it up. Okay. It ends with the aforementioned death of the human mage foretelling the child's legacy, and we see the beginnings of the treaty that leads to Pax Tharkaz being built, which I believe is the next novel. I thought this was a great story and redeemed the author in my eyes after the Gates of Thorbardin. I am excited to read the next novel in the trilogy, but Dragons of Eternity will be out before I can get to it, so I will be reading it next. I highly recommend this novel to any fan of Dragonlance or of dwarves. So, what do you guys have to say about this? I do answer every single comment, no matter how benign they are. You're enjoying the human-dwarven conflicts in the early part of the book. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't understand. I don't know. I guess I do get, different nations fight with each other. That's what we do as humans, so why not in fantasy books too? The author added a derogatory term for the dwarves. Oh, dinks. Yeah, dinks. So I remember when I was a kid and Willow came out. I love that film, by the way. And the Nelwyn, the little people, were called pecks. It was a derogatory term for the Nelwyn. And I was called a peck by someone that was smaller than me at like a Cub Scout meeting. He was insistent on insulting me and kept calling me a peck. But the peck in Willow, the derogatory term, he was the hero. So I didn't see it as a negative at all. I mean, that was ridiculous. Yeah, okay, so Willow's a peck. He's also a powerful sorcerer, and he also saved the entire land. So congratulations on the insult, I guess. The same thing with dink. So humans reference the dwarves as dink in this, meaning they're small and dinky. But this whole story is about how the dwarves are powerful and successful and ultimately define their own destinies. So yeah, call them dinks if you want. I don't see it as negative at all because they're the heroes. It's like with the gully dwarves. Everyone's like, oh, stinking gully dwarves. No, they're wildly happy creatures and they live a life that other people probably wish they could through their happiness and their joy of life. Even when they live in squalor, they're still content and happy and heroes in their own right. So I don't know. I think anyone who throws down derogatory terms at someone should probably stop for a second and look at themselves because they're probably trying to knock someone else down so that they appear to be above them. But in truth, if you really are above someone else, you don't have to knock them down. Because you're not focusing on them. You're focusing on lifting yourself up. So yeah, I mean, derogatory phrases, admittedly, I'm a privileged white man in this world. So there's nothing you could call me that could bother me. Like literally nothing at all. So I am far removed from the sense of racism and bigotry. But own it and turn it against them by being the best version of you. All right, so let's see. Baldur's Gate 3 type game for DragonLance would be the best thing ever. Yeah, that'd be dope. I still have never played that game, but I've heard it's great. Every time you play it, you can't help thinking that you're surprised that elves and dwarves involve themselves in war. They ever got along anyways. It's like inevitable, right? Like that is just the natural way of mortals. We have to war with each other and find reasons to differentiate each other. It all stems from initial survival in our, primitive lizard brains when we were literally crawling around, hiding behind trees and in caves. Like we had to stick around and unite with those closest to us because we were trying to control our sense of resources. And when anyone else came from the outside in, they were a threat because they could either take our resources, our families, or our lives. And that's a genuine threat. And so you have to be against the other. The problem is that we've evolved to a point where we actually don't need that part of our lizard brain anymore. We can actually just be okay independently or as whatever collective you want to associate yourself with, because ultimately we're not fighting for scraps of land. I mean, ironically, as Russia is invading Ukraine and Israel is invading Gaza. I'm not making political statements, just facts. And yeah, clearly, like we are still fighting over scraps of land, but we don't have to. It's a choice that we're making. And we could choose not to, is all I'm getting at. All right, so Dragonlance was your first fantasy foray as a child, even predating Lord of the Rings. Me too, actually. That's funny. They're worried about their beard getting in the way. You haven't listened to it audibly yet. Your wife asked you to leave the delivery room because you kept making dad jokes out of nervousness. Seriously? Oh, I would have kicked you out too. Out of the way, Peck. I love the realistic art style of the cover. Yeah, I mean, well, I should look that way, but my camera's reversed, so you guys see me straight way. Yeah, it's a great cover. All right, you just meant that ignoring derogatory terms in literature makes it seem like they don't take place. You're okay with, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I wasn't referencing that at all. But I think that's the strength of novelists and why they endure through time, like Mark Twain, who used the vernacular of the day to showcase an engaging story that broke past bigotry and racism. And I don't think that was his intention, but that's certainly the outcome of it. And there's just tons of American authors that have done the same thing, where they use the vernacular that is derogatory, but they don't hyper focus on it. It's just that's how they spoke that in that time. And so in order to sell a convincing period piece, I'm going to use that language. That doesn't bother me. But then again, I am a privileged white man, so what the hell do I know? Raistlin and Bapu, great example of a hero. Like Bapu became a hero because of Raistlin. And yeah, if it wasn't for her, they would never have met the Highbolt. They would have never found the secret entrance to Kisanth, and they probably would have been all murdered. and Raistlin wouldn't have got that kick-ass spell book. All right. That's all I got. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That is it for my review of The Covenant of the Forge by Dan Parkinson. What do you think of the move of the Kalnar to Hylar and the Einar to Nidar? Is there a difference in Dwarven subraces? And finally, do you enjoy historical Dragonlance stories like this? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com or leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world after 40 years. This wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. Thank you so much for joining in the celebration. And so, for Dragonlance Saga, my name's Adam. Until next time, Slanjavar, which is like literally the next video I'm going to do here.